Hey, sweet friends, it's Andrea. I hope you're having a good day. I hope that you're having a great week. We are in week 7 of our summer book club on the road with Abraham, and I am overwhelmed by the goodness of God, the plan of God, the way that he goes before and he makes a way. We see that in Abraham's life. In fact, this week he's going to change from Abram to Abraham as we dig into Genesis chapter 17. And I see that truth in my life as well. I want you to take just a moment and think about your life. Go back and think about the faithfulness of God, the hand of God, the provision of God, the power of God, the peace of God, the presence of God throughout your journey, and how he's faithful to show us the next step of faith and the next step of obedience. And that's what we're going to look at in chapter 7 of On the Road with Abraham. We're going to look at a life that is marked by God. And for us, our lives are marked by faith. They're marked by obedience. They're marked by surrender. They're marked by abiding. They're marked by simply putting our yes on the table. We're going to see in Genesis chapter 17 that God called Abram to a very important point of decision that required immediate obedience, which was circumcision. And so you're going to dig into that, and you're going to see that interaction between God and Abram. And in the process of that, God is going to change Abram's name to Abraham, and he's going to change Sarai's name to Sarah. And I just think that's so powerful how God lined up their names with their purpose. And when you get to the end of chapter 7, you're going to see a question that I really want you to think about, because I think it'll give insight into our hearts and into our perspectives when it comes to God's good work in our life. And here is the question that you're going to be asked. Given the season that you're in right now, if God was to give you a name, what would it be? Would it be, lining up with his peace, or with his power, with his provision, with his presence? How is God working in this season of your life? And then in the context, or in the content of chapter 7, you're going to be asked a question: what does obedience look like in this season of your life? And how can you take that step of faith? How can you take that step of surrender? We're going to get into a little bit more of the promises that God made to Abraham in Genesis chapter 7. We're going to revisit that initial promise from Genesis chapter 12. We're going to talk about the land and the legacy, so keep your eyes on that. And also in Genesis chapter 17, God introduced himself as El Shaddai, which talks about his mighty, sufficient power. And as you will read in On the Road with Abraham, this is the first time that name was used in Scripture. So it meant that God was revealing more of himself to Abram. And I'm so thankful that we can serve El Shaddai, that we can know the sufficiency of God. We can know the power of God in the midst of our journeys. And so I hope that you enjoyed this particular chapter. I want to just point out a little bit about the transforming truth. And it's recorded for you at the beginning of the chapter, and then also on page 104 at the end of the chapter. And here is what it is: trusting God leads to a life marked by God. This week, I hope you'll consider what a life marked by God looks like for you. What are the distinguishing marks that God is calling you to live out? And in the context of this chapter, I share a little bit about different check marks that I can tend to think about whenever it comes to my journey with God, like checking all the boxes, doing all the right things, but failing to really cultivate a passionate pursuit of Jesus, a friendship with God. And so I want to invite you into some introspection when it comes to your life, into your journey. How do you measure spiritual growth? How do you define spiritual growth? What does obedience look like in this particular season of life? How does it start on the inside and then ultimately make its way to the outside? And as you consider that, you will learn how to demonstrate faith in the simple acts of responding to God's work in your life. I'm so thankful for the life of Abraham and how he demonstrated faith in the ups and the downs and the twists and the turns. My sweet friends, we can do the same thing. And so as you dive into week 7 of On the Road with Abraham, what does a life marked by God look like in this season of life for you and for your family? I hope that you'll consider that question and talk to the Lord about it. Have a great week.